Hello, BookTube. Well, Deb came over today yet again to babysit with little Frida Bean so that I could go out and do errands. And as I was going out the door, I said, I am going to get at most one book today while I'm out and about doing other things. I am not going to come back here lugging 400 pounds of books. So, of course, I've got a huge pile of books to show you. These are all from today. Starting with a batch of Penguin classics. Wonderful. Well, the first one being the science fiction of Edgar Allan Poe. I've had this volume many times, and I know that I don't have it now, so I was happy to find it. Then a big fat volume of the collected short stories of Graham Greene, which is, Graham Greene has never really done it for me the way he has for so many other people. But his short stories I rather like, so having one volume of them in a Penguin is great. Then two books that are not only Penguin classics, but Anthony Trollope. First, there's The Prime Minister, which felt a little weird to get because I just finished rereading The Prime Minister on my phone without requiring carrying it around or reinforcing it with tape, without requiring putting it on a shelf or anything like that. I read it on my phone, and I loved it. I was absorbed in it. I missed subway stops because of it. And I just finished it. So when I saw this, I thought, well, okay, you just finished it. It's going to be at least a year before you want to read it again. And when you do, you'll read it on your phone or whatever device you have at the time. You don't need this book. But I love Penguin Classics, and I love Trollope, and I don't have this, so I got it. And if there was no reason for me to get that, then that goes even more for the next Trollope novel that I got, which is The Duke's Children, in a lovely Penguin Classic trade paperback, brand new. And the reason why, all the same stuff applies. I just recently reread The Duke's Children. I read it on my phone. But the real reason why this was a silly purchase is because Everyman's Library just did a version of The Duke's Children that is complete, whereas this is not. But the editor of that volume went through the original serialized production of The Duke's Children that was much longer than the novel Trollope ended up cutting and pasting to suit his editor's needs. Somebody went back, collated all of those original installments, and made a definitive uncut version of The Duke's Children. And as I've said many times, and as I said when I wrote about the book, that makes it the only version of The Duke's Children that any Trollope fan is going to want to read. He didn't make the edits to make this volume for artistic reasons. That would be one thing. If he did, then this would still have merit as a volume. But no, he cut lines, paragraphs, and whole pages from his original version of the book because an editor wanted him to make a shorter manuscript. That's all. So the slim justification I used for buying this was A, it was like 25 cents, and B, I'll read the notes. I'll read the introduction, and it'll be on my Penguin Classic, The Wall of Penguins. And I might read it, you never know. But anyway, the next two are two in a bunch this time around that were for March Mystery Madness, this BookTube-wide event that's coming up on the 1st of March, in which all month long a whole bunch of people are hosting the event, and they asked me to join them. This is my first BookTube hosting gig, in which we will be talking about mysteries, we're showing you mysteries, we're urging you to read mysteries, and so I've noticed that since I agreed to do that, and I've been thinking about it, I've been noticing mysteries when they come across my path in the course of a book buying or book acquiring day. And this one was, it's a UK trade paperback of The Murder Room by P.D. James. I love these big UK trade paperbacks. I just love them. I love them more than American hardcovers. I wish that all of American books came this way. But I love P.D. James, and I'm certainly going to want to reread her and talk about her during March Mystery Madness, so I got it. And another one was another mystery, and the first in a series, which is wonderful. This is Starvation Lake by Brian Crowley, and they're contemporary murder mysteries, very atmospheric, very high on the action and the sharp characterization that take place in Michigan. often in the dead of winter. So it's and I remember I read Starvation Lake when it first came out. Oh God, when was that? It had to be 20 years ago. I remember reading it when it first came out and really liking it. And the series has since gone on. It's enormous now. First came out in 2009, so not 20 years, but still. I highly recommend this first volume. And I knew every time I get a new copy of one of the latest installments in the series, I always say, well, I'm not going to keep this because I don't have the first volume. And now I have the first volume. And then I got a hardcover volume to replace a trade paperback of mine that is breaking its spine and falling apart because I recur to it so often. And that is The World of Jeeves by P.G. Wodehouse. This is a hardcover collection of all of the short stories of Jeeves and Wooster. And I've shown my paperback on this channel before, but the paperback, it's only good if you don't need Wodehouse as badly as I often do. So a hardcover sort of suggested itself. And then back to March Mystery Madness. A treat, a thing that I couldn't believe it was like 50 cents, and I grabbed it right away. It's a hardcover copy of Michael Harrison's I, Sherlock Holmes, in which he gathers all of the biographical and historical information from the canon of Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes stories and melds them into an autobiography told by Holmes. And it is in the long history of Sherlock Holmes pastiche fiction, it is one of a small handful of the best ones there are. So I was overjoyed to find it in it. I had a trade paperback of this a while ago, and it fell apart. I kept going back to it so often that it fell apart. So now I have it again, and just in time. Then we have a thriller in a series that I've mentioned on this channel before. I was very happy to find this in a nice hardcover. This is the Assassination Option by W.E.B. Griffin and William Buttersworth. And it's part of the Clandestine Operations series that are high-octane action and spies and counter-spies, lots and lots of great dialogue, and it's historical. They're historical. They take place a little bit before, during, and a little bit after World War II. And they are very, very satisfying, if that's the sort of thing you're looking for. Sort of a Len Dayton kind of thing. This is a series you cannot go wrong with. Although it did raise questions in my mind about March Mystery Madness, because I don't know, do we count that as a mystery? We'll be talking about that, what we count as mysteries and why. The next one is a hardcover book that I think we've seen on this channel before, because I have a review copy of it from eons ago. This is Intervention by Julian May, who wrote the Pliocene Exile series that we've talked about in Mass Market. The Pliocene Exile series takes place in the not-too-distant future, in which mankind is being uplifted by technologically and socially by the galactic milieu. And one of the hallmarks, one of the ways that the members of the galactic milieu know that a race is ready for uplift is if metapsychic abilities have begun to manifest in the population. This small selection of mental and telekinetic superpowers that Julian May worked out in the Pliocene Exile series, where in that series, all of these things are very, very well elaborated. Humans understand them. People know, are tested for them as children. But this takes place well before that. This takes place before mankind is even aware that there are aliens in the universe, much less is being invited to join their ranks. This is a story that takes place in working-class Middletown, New Hampshire, in the present day, in which a young boy begins to develop these powers. And the narrative is broad. It eventually sprawls all over the world, and becomes obvious that he's not the only one. This is an amazingly effective novel about what would happen if superpowers, not, super strength or flying or anything like that, but if super mental powers started developing in the human population in the present day, what would it be like? I cannot recommend this book highly enough. It is the first book, turns out, in a series of books that Julian May then went on to write about the very early years of mankind's advancement to the next level of its evolution. But this can be read on its own. I read it as a standalone long before I thought there would be other novels, and it is amazingly good. I mean, the Pleiadian Exile books are wonderful in their own right, starting with The Many-Colored Land, then The Golden Torque, then The Non-Born King, then The Adversary. But the problem with them is that they were clearly written as a series. So if you pick up The Many-Colored Land, you're going to get a great plot, a great premise, some great characters, but a horrible ending because it's just moving on to the next book. Whereas this doesn't give that feeling, and these are characters you can really like, or in the case of the bad guy, really hate. So I do recommend it. I was very happy to find a hardcover. Then we have a piece of presidential writing. I've mentioned on this channel lately that I'm just giving in to my love of U.S. presidential writing, and this book that I found for I think 25 cents is an absolute classic of the Reagan years, a treatment of the Reagan years, and it's Landslide by Jane Meyer and Doyle McManus. She wrote for the Wall Street Journal. He wrote for the L.A. Times, and it's a study in great detail of the last few years of Reagan's second term. Presidency in disarray, a president seeming more and more withdrawn from everything that's going on around him, and in hindsight, we know a lot about that withdrawal. It's easy to understand from this book that Reagan wasn't quite a well man when he left office, but the far more than that, the authors use contemporaneous records and interviews and whatnot to bring the whole cast of the Reagan White House alive. Just an amazing book. And I've had it here before. I might even have shown it on a library tour. I don't have it anymore, but now I do. And I'm just going to build a bookcase of U.S. presidential writing. I'm just going to, when it's a little warmer and I can do the bookworm equivalent of spring cleaning, I'm going to make a bookcase about U.S. presidents. Not just biographies, but I'm going to bring everything together in one place. Probably in this room. But in the meantime, since this was so cheap, I had to get it. The next one was free, and it's a book I love. I've recommended it many times before, and every time I recommend it, somebody emails me and says, "Do you have a copy you can send me?" So I do. So I'm always without a copy myself. And that's Sarah Schmidt, See What I Have Done. A really gripping historical novel dramatizing the Lizzie Borden murders. I think, a miraculously good job. Just a wonderful book. I don't know how long it'll be that I'll have this copy before I send it off to somebody, but I was happy to find it. And then the next one is a very rare thing, if I do say so myself. As you all know, you watch this channel, I have pretty much given over my reading to new books, despite this video. Most of the reading that I do is new releases, and has been for a while. I've been a literary editor for 11 years. I've been a new book reviewer for 11 years. I get books here in the mail all the time. I see them all the time, talk with friends and colleagues about them all the time. My reading has largely shifted to new releases. And this book is an example of a new release that came out during that time. Got a lot of word of mouth that I didn't read. I just didn't read it. And I couldn't explain why if you asked me. This is Nicola Griffith. This is Hild, which I'm sure a lot of you have read. I've seen it on BookTube mentioned many times. It's a book that was new and talked about and had notoriety, and I never got around to reading it. So here it is. So I'll be very happy to read it now. In fact, I think it will, of all of these, it will probably be something I read this weekend, even though it's not brand new. And then the last book was a brand new title that I got in advance. I got an advance copy. I got the finished copy. I eventually got the paperback. I reviewed it. I loved it, and I didn't keep it. Don't know why. I have no idea. So when I saw it for nothing, I had to get it. This is Laura Claridge's biography of Blanche Knopf, the mastermind behind so much that we think of when we think of her namesake publishing house. That's still going strong and is still fantastic. I thought the book was wonderful, chatty but wonderful. And so when I saw this, I could kick myself. I thought, well, okay, you still don't have a copy of that book, and you really should, for the biography section. So there you go. Book 2. There is a used book haul that I did not intend to do. I did not intend to get any of these. I told Deb, at most, I will come back with one book. Instead, I lugged back a shoulder bag and a tote bag full of them. But there's some really good picks in this batch. So anyway, I'll wrap this up for now, and I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.